And final segment here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, let's talk a little Jeremy Sochan from Baylor. This guy is a man after my own heart because, again, another defensive-minded wing, a guy with a ton of potential as a two-way player at the NBA level. Great size, great physicality, just across the board. It checks all the boxes for a guy that I'd love the Rockets to pick up. Even I'd probably take Sochan over Tari Eason if I could. I know that Tari Eason, so the difference between these, Tari Eason has a three-point shot that actually goes in right now. Sochan doesn't. And so that's where kind of the difference is between these two guys. But when I look at Jeremy Sochan, I see like shades of like a young Jeff Green kind of, but with better defensive IQ and instincts and maybe less of a shot. That's kind of like, and he's also been comped to guys like Ben Simmons, Aaron Gordon, or a couple of other names. Like think of those like 6'8 to 6'10 uber athletes that are, mismatch nightmares and can guard multiple positions on the floor, are terrors in transition, either with the ball in their hands or just filling the lanes in transition. Great size to finish in and around the rim. Straight up great athletes. And again, if you got a guy like that in a 6'8 to 6'10 frame, which is exactly what he has. So just going through his physicals here, he's 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, great size all around, weighs about 230 pounds. So he's got an NBA ready frame, like coming out of the gate. There's not this worry of like, okay, he's got to add the muscle. He's got to, bulk up a little bit to be able to deal with guys at the NBA. No, he's going to come in and he's going to be a force to deal with immediately. He is one of the best defensive prospects in the draft. Again, can guard multiple positions, is going to be great in whatever scheme you want to throw him in, right? If you want to run him out as a small ball five, great. He's going to be a mismatch offensively and defensively. He'll still be able to hold his own. He'll be able to switch. He'll be able to do whatever you ask of him defensively. Guarding smaller players, he's got the speed, the athleticism to stick with them. Guarding bigger players, he's got the size, the toughness, the defensive instincts, both on ball and off ball, to just, again, throw him into any defensive scheme, and this kid is going to absolutely thrive. Just 19 years old. A great rebounder. Just going through his numbers, he averaged just under 9 points per game, little over 6 boards per game, about 1.3 steals per contest, and then just under a block per game for Baylor this past season. We'll talk about his offensive repertoire here in just a moment, but I want to stick, with the defensive side of things. God, can't say any words today. Stick with the defensive side of things for a moment. He's, again, has all the tools to be a great pick and roll defender, to be a great isolation defender, to defend multiple different types of players, smaller, bigger, faster, quicker, stronger. It doesn't matter. You throw anything at this kid, he's going to be able to handle it. And then one of my biggest things, right, is trying to judge a defender by how well they box out. And he is incredibly adept at boxing out. He's active on rebounds. He fights hard. He does his work early. I've talked about this with Alperen Sengun ad nauseum this past season. I love watching Alpi box out for rebounds, and Sochan does an incredible job of making sure that he closes out defensive possessions strong with rebounds. Now, offensively, he is a playmaker. He's able to, have the ball in his hands. He's got a really solid handle that, utilizes a little bit of, a little fancy footwork at times, some misdirection, some really fluid back and forth movements, some hezzies, crossovers, that kind of thing, to be able to generate, openings and space for him. And that's what makes him so interesting is you give, like we take a look at a guy like Christian Wood, right, who's been a mismatch for opposing bigs for a minute for the Houston Rockets. Wood doesn't have like a super fluid, amazing handle. It's kind of herky-jerky at times, right? But he gets the job done because he's faster and quicker than a lot of other NBA bigs. Sochan is a guy, he's got a handle. And so you put him out there and you throw a legit 4 or a legit 5 at him to try and check him defensively, and he's just going to fly right by them. He's going to give him 1 or 2, a boom, boom, and he's going to be right past them at the rim. You put a smaller guy on him, and the physicality might be a little bit too much. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a reliable post game right now. The ability to go back down, take advantage of a smaller player would do him wonders because like a lot of the guys that we've talked about recently, doesn't have a shot. Just shot 30% from the three-point line at Baylor. Not great shooting percentage whatsoever. Just 31.7% on catch and shoot threes and only 57.5% of his free throws. When he's shooting off the catch, it's kind of this like slow release where he just doesn't get the ball up quick enough, and it doesn't exactly look the same as when he's attacking off the dribble, when he's got the ball in his hands and he gets to a spot and tries to pull up himself. He's shooting 35.7% on pull-up twos and floaters, which is still not a great number. Hasn't taken a whole ton of pull-up threes, so there are some legitimate concerns there about his offensive repertoire. Again, I like the shot when he's doing it himself, when he's like getting into his shot motion, and maybe that's just a thing that they can kind of work on to kind of speed up the shooting motion and get it to a place where it's a little bit more reliable when he's got the catch and shoot opportunities, because that's exactly what he's going to get a ton of at the NBA level as like that tweener 3-4 on the wing type guy. He's got to be able to convert at a high rate of those threes. Again, 30% isn't nearly as bad as Jang, all the way down at 21.3%, but it's still not anything to write home about, and it is a cause for concern. But you look at everything else that this guy is bringing to the table, and again, if it's just the shot that you've got to figure out, you're drafting these guys because they're uber athletes, right? It's not like you're looking for a skill position, a niche like shooter who's just going to come in and only be able to shoot and do nothing else on the floor. This is a guy who can do a lot of different things on the floor, a total Swiss Army knife, but he's just got to develop and work on the shooting game. Talked about the fact that he just doesn't have, so as far as just his overall offensive repertoire, right? Like, he can put the ball on the floor, he can drive, he can finish in and around the rim, but he doesn't have a complete, a reliable offensive go-to game right now just yet, unfortunately. And that is kind of the biggest issue with his game is, what is he going to look like offensively if he's not hitting catch and shoot threes, if he doesn't have a reliable go-to game offensively? Yeah, he could put the ball on the floor, he can pass a little bit, he can play make, he can create. But right now I don't want to call him an offensive black hole because that's a little bit too negative. That's approaching Usman Garuba territory right now. But the offensive side of things needs work for him. He's definitely a guy that I feel like maybe you don't necessarily send him down to the G League, but he's maybe a guy that could get some reps at the G League level to try and figure out like what his ability is, what his true ceiling is offensively before the Rockets bring him back up for maybe like the second half of the season to kind of see what he's got going on. Defensively, takes some risks at times, but every player that is a capable high-level defender, guys that we've talked about, Tari Eason, Marjon Beauchamp, all these guys are risk takers at times defensively. You have to be. You have to gamble sometimes to play passing lanes, to be aggressive on ball, to pressure opposing players, to create and force turnovers, that kind of thing. And that's exactly what this kid does. But again, I raved about his defense earlier. He's going to thrive in whatever defensive scheme you put him in at the NBA level. And for the Rockets, especially having a guy like Alperen Sengun at your 5 spot now and potentially Paolo Banchero at your 4 spot, you want to surround those guys with high-level, high IQ defensive players. And this is a guy that is going to be able to thrive as an on-ball defender, as an off-ball defender, just has a great overall feel for the game. And if he can get that 3 ball to really translate, he is going to be an absolutely incredible 2-way player at the NBA for years to come. High-level role player, borderline all-star type caliber talent. If he can get that 3 ball up to a reliable place of like 34, 35, 36%, we're talking about an insanely talented player. So for the Houston Rockets, I would love for them to be able to have the opportunity to trade up to select this guy. I think, again, both Jang and Sochan are going to be just a little bit outside of the Rockets' range, but it's also incredibly possible one of them falls outside of the lottery, because at this point, there are so many different names moving and shaking and rising and falling. I have no idea how the rest of the lottery is going to play out at this point. So maybe one of these guys is on the board when the Rockets are selecting at 17. I would be really jazzed if the Rockets took either of these guys, especially Sochan, again, just because of all the defensive skills that he brings to the table. I think he's a really, really enticing prospect for this Houston Rockets team. So that's going to do it for today's episode, going over Nick Claxton, the Rockets potentially pursuing him, and, just looking for centers outside of the draft and in free agency, of all places, to back up Alperen Sengun, Ousmane Dieng, and Jeremy Sochan's draft profiles. Let me know what you think about these guys as possible prospects for the Houston Rockets. Let me know in the YouTube comments. As always, Appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. And check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked on Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.